Hi, it's Neil from PowerSyncPro, and today I'm going to demo installing PowerSyncPro Directory Synchronization. Then I'm going to sync AD users from one directory to another Active Directory, and then I'm also going to change some attributes, make some mistakes, and use the what if report to identify those problems or those mistakes, rectify them before we commit them at the target. So in my source, I have a server called Fabricam, and the AD domain is called migsource.net. And then I'm going to be syncing those users over to migtarget.net on the server Contoso. That's really all that's in my environment, apart from the PowerSyncPro server that sits in the middle that does have connectivity and line of sight to those domain controllers. I'm going to be performing some manipulation, so I'll be taking the domain portion of the MIG source and changing it to MIG target in the target. And then I'll also be prefixing the display name with an extra set of characters to identify those users in the target, which tends to be a similar set of circumstances that we see for some customers. Obviously, in your environment, you need to map out the type of circumstances that you want to sync, the type of attributes and matching that you need to perform. So this is very much a made-up scenario just to demonstrate some of the features and functionality of PowerSyncPro Directory Synchronization. So let's have a look at our server. I have some prerequisites here already. The first thing that I need to do is install .NET 8 Core Runtime. That is a fairly quick install. All of the prerequisites are listed on our website, powersyncpro.com/documentation. It will detail everything that you need to be able to run PowerSyncPro and the migration agent as well. The next one is the Visual C++ redistributable. Let's just install that. That's really nice and quick. And of course, what else you can find on our website is the various other configuration documents and limitations and things like that. So please always check our website first before doing anything. Next is SQL Express. I'm installing 2022. You can install anything from 2019 onwards, and obviously you can have your own SQL implementation as well. I'm going to choose the basic installation here and just let that install, and I'll come back to you when that's complete. It should take about 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, SQL Express is now installed. Let's go on to install PowerSyncPro. The first thing we're going to need to do is to read the EULA. Let's accept that and the license agreement. I'm going to use some default installation options here, just onto the C drive program files. Remote agents are when you do not have line of sight to Active Directory, you don't have connectivity to it. You can synchronize over the internet, and also there are password agents as well. So when RC4 is disabled in your environment, a higher level of password security, then you can also put agents onto DCs and synchronize passwords securely as well. We're not demoing that today, so we will ignore this. I will leave the default port as port 5000. As I've done SQL Express, I need to put SQL Express into the instance, and that should then identify the basic installation of SQL Express, and I'll choose the default database name for PowerSyncPro. I could use an AD service account, a local service account, local admin account, or a group managed service account. I'm just going to use the local system account for this demo. And I'm not using PowerSyncPro migration agent, so I don't need to create an external endpoint for PowerSyncPro. So therefore, I will just ignore that as well and let the install happen. That takes about 40 seconds. I'll come back to you in a second. Okay, that's PowerSyncPro now installed. Let's go to the browser and have a look. So I need to type in localhost port 5000. And this should load the PowerSyncPro interface. Fantastic. The default username and password is in our documentation. What I recommend you do is come up to the global settings and then click users. You can then modify the username and password to make your environment a little bit more secure. So now we want to start the synchronization between our two Active Directories. Let's have a look at those first. Here I have my MIG source. Within here I have the MIG source limited users OU with some countries and some departments for different users. There's about 500 or so users dotted around within here, and I'm just showing you that the display name here is just their first name, last name, and the email address is the migsource.net. Let's have a look at the target environment. Not much in here. It's pretty empty, to be honest. Do a quick refresh. I've got this head office users OU with nothing in it. I've got my corp users OU here, and pretty much everything else is out the box. So the first thing we need to do with PowerSyncPro is to create a connection between our directories from PowerSyncPro to the source directory, PowerSyncPro to the target directory, and we set them up as directories. So let's go create and then go an Active Directory directory type. This is where I need to type in my source name. I can put in anything I like there. And then I need to provide my server name here. I then need to provide the service account that has access to everything, reader access in my environment, and also specify the password. Down here, I need to import the type of objects which I'm going to be focused upon. I'm just caring about users on this occasion. I don't care about computers, groups, contacts, or group membership. That's for another demo. Once I click save, it will go off and verify that all of the credentials are correct. Now I need to create the directory for my target environment. I will do exactly the same, but this time type target AD, put in my Contoso server, and then once I've done that, I will need a service account for my target environment as well. I'm using a domain admin account. You can obviously refine the access for your environment. I'm also going to be importing users here, just in case there are any other users in the target environment which I need to match or sync, but I'm not going to be doing groups or computers or contacts in this demo. Now that I've got my source and target, the next step I need to do is actually create the actions that I want to perform, the syncs that I want to perform. So I'll come to my sync profiles. If I create one up here, the first thing I need to do is give it a name. So my first sync. I then need to select my source and target directory. So a source can be an AD, a Google, and the directory could be AD as well, or even Entra if you'd set them up. There is a concept of templates. This is a default set of matching and mapping attributes which organizations may typically use when doing an AD to AD sync. So I am going to select the users one. I've got users, groups, or contacts, but you will need to customize this for your own needs. This has self-populated some of the options down here. So the object type that I'm focused on is now user. Sync action, create only, or do I want to create an update, update only, or match only? On this circumstance, I'm going to change it from create only to create or update. And then when I'm creating an object for the first time, am I going to do a user, group, or contact? This occasion, I'm not going to do any form of manipulation of the object, so I would do a user. And then when I'm matching objects, what do I want to match to? Again, I'm doing fairly simple configuration here, but obviously you could start to see there's a lot of opportunity here to manipulate objects and create the desired outcome. Moving down a little bit, we're on to the scoping tab here. This is where I select my source OUs, my source containers. I've got a list of everything that you saw earlier, and I have my MIG source limited users within here. So I'm just going to select all of those. You can obviously pick and choose how you want to choose the different objects that are going to get synced. So I'm just going to select that entire container and all child OUs. Next, we select the target container. Do we want the users to go into? I have this head office users here, so I will select that OU. I also want to recreate the container structure. So I'm going to check create target containers and create child containers as well. There are some options below about inclusion and exclusion attributes, so I can really start to refine which objects we're targeting to sync from the source to the target. I do not have any inclusion or exclusion requirements in my environment. There is also complex expressions where I can build up some logic to identify which accounts I'm going to include or exclude in this sync profile. I'm doing a fairly basic one today. That's for another lesson, another day. Now I'm on to my matching. It's already pre-populated user principal name as the source and user principal name in the target as part of that template. This is where it will take the UPN at the source, see if it can find that value in the target. If it can't find that value in the target, it will then create it. I'm happy with that configuration right now. Coming on to mapping, it has populated a preset number of attributes to be able to sync from source to target. Right now, I don't want to make any changes here. I think that's all happy. Next, we're on to the sync options. Do I want to delete the target objects if the object in the source is deleted? That's fine for me. Legacy password sync. Do I want to sync password hashes between the source and the target? Yes. There are no other configurations here that I want to do. Group members, I'm not doing that on this sync profile. I'm not converting contacts. I'm not performing sync SID history. Modern password sync, do not have RC4 disabled, so I'm not going to choose that one, and I'm not synchronizing groups. User account. When I create the accounts for the first time in the target, do I want to flow the enablement of that account, the type of enablement? Do I want to always enable, always disable, or flow it from whatever the source was set? I'm going to set flow from source. So if something's enabled in the source, it will be enabled in the target on create. If something's disabled in the source, it will be disabled in the target on create. And then when I come to update the objects, what do I want to do? Do I still want to flow that? Do I want to leave target alone and never change that state? Or do I want to always enable or always disable? I'm going to say keep as is on target. Mail enable options. This is for exchange style attributes like hidden from the GAU and offline address book. I'm just going to leave those for another day. Let's click save. Next thing I need to do is go and see what would happen in my target environment without actually committing any of this to the target environment. Let's go on to schedule. The first thing I need to do is select how often the sync is going to run. So I click on edit schedule, 30 minutes is fine. Now you'll see that I have my source and my target and my first sync. Because I'm within the 30 minutes and for the purposes of the demo, I'm just going to click run now at the top to start that sync process. And you can see it starting to import all of the objects. We're up to 500 there and that's done. Now it's performing the first sync and it's looking at all of those objects and trying to pretend to create all of those. You'll notice there's a little asterisk on here that is showing that a configuration change has happened within this environment. We've created the configuration for the first time, and therefore what we need to do is need to check that everything is okay within the environment before we proceed. And we do that by right-clicking on it and looking at the what if. So we can go to the what if report and we can see what PowerSyncPro would do in the target environment if it were to be approved, if this what if report was to be approved. So I can look at one of these users and see what would happen. So I've got my source object in my MIG source environment. Target object, it hasn't found a match. There is no current target object for it to update. So this column here is blank. And then the future target is going to create this object. And these are all the changes it's going to apply in the target environment. So looking at display name, it's copied the display name, but you'll remember from my requirements earlier, I want to put a prefix on here. So that I'm not happy with that at all. Now coming down to mail, you'll notice that mail has got MIG source, and it's got MIG source on the target. Again, I want that to be MIG target on the target. I don't want it to be MIG source. So that's just copied that value across without any manipulation. The same applies to proxy address, except I appear to be missing a proxy address there. And for UPN as well, I've got MIG source here, but also MIG source in the target as well. And I want that to be MIG target instead. So I've got a bit of manipulation to do there. So let's come back to the sync profile and see what we can do. Let's go click on edit and look at some of these mappings. If I come down to the display name here, I have a simple expression or a complex expression. Simple expression is where I just perform very simple actions to the attribute values. Complex expression is where I can build an if this then that type formula to really get deep into manipulating that data. If I click on edit, you'll see I could choose one of those two, but I haven't got any simple expressions or complex expressions to apply. And let's look at, for example, the male attribute. Exactly the same applies. I don't have any to apply, so I need to go off and create a simple or complex expression. On the left, I have a simple expression, so let's go there and let's create one. So let's call this first one prefix MIG source, M-I-G, MIG source. And then I'm going to create this rule. So what type of rewrite function do I want to do? How are we going to manipulate this data for the simple expression? Well, it's right on screen there. So I'm going to add a prefix. There are lots of other options here for you to choose from. Uppercase, truncate, suffix, replace string. You can even use regexes. So prefix is the one that I want to do. How am I going to match the objects? I'm only going to be applying this to display name. So I'm just going to go like anything. So that will use any value. It will look for any value within that display name when I come to apply this simple expression. And what is the prefix? MIGS with a space on the end. So there's a space in between the first letter of the first name and the MIGS. Let's save that. Great. So this simple expression is created. The next one I want to do is the domain portion of the mail account, the proxy addresses, and the UPN. So let's do that as well. Create, replace MIG target.net. Replace with MIG target. So let's create this rule. Rewrite function. Let's have a look. We've got replace string down here. I could create a regex, but let's keep it simple. Replace string. Again, what type of match? I'm going to do it for a particular set of attributes. So I'm just going to say match anything. And I'm going to find the value MIG source. And I'm going to replace with MIG target.net. And that's my other simple expression completed. Let's go back to my sync profiles, update that, and I want to go now look at what would actually happen. So first of all, I need to go to my display name, click on edit, simple expression, prefix, MIGS. Now let's go find the other ones. I want to look at mail. I will do the same. So I'm replacing with MIG target. What else? I have my proxy addresses. Let's do it for proxy addresses as well. And you can see here that the simple expression is being populated with that manipulation. And the same again for user principal name. Okay, now let's go and have a look at my what if. Here we go. You can see the asterisk is still there. I can right click, go to what if, and that will process all of the objects with the updates to the configuration that I've made, but it's not committing it to the target. Okay, let's have a look at one of these users, Liam, and let's go down and have a look at that. In the display name, you can see here that MIGS is now prefixed on display name. That is exactly what I wanted. The mail attribute, MIG source, has converted to MIG target. Perfect. And looking down here, the proxy addresses have converted, but only one of the objects, only one of the entries have come across. This has pretty much come across from the mail attribute. So I need to fix something here. And the user principal name down the bottom has got MIG target as well. So all of the manipulation there has started. So what's going on with the proxy address? Well, there's a protective feature within PowerSyncPro so that only certain domains can be added to the target environment. So I need to add a new SMTP domain into my configuration. So let's come across to SMTP domains on the left-hand side. And there's two things that I need to do here. I'm going to click Create, and I first need to select the environment in which I'm making these changes on. So I'm going to go my target AD. And the first thing I need to do is say SMTP style addresses will be added. Obviously, there's things like SMTP, X500, SIP addresses, and lots of others. But I'm going to be focused here on just the SMTP portion. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to allow sync additions and allow sync removals. Next, I'm going to actually add the domain I'm trying to add. So again, you select the target environment where you're going to be adding this. I'm going to put in MIG target. And I will allow the addition of objects to the target domain, and I will allow the removal of those entries in the target domain as well. Click Save. Now I've made yet another configuration change. So let's go and look at the what if once again. It will then process all of those objects with those updated settings. So I'm really starting to get confidence that what I'm going to apply in the target environment is actually what I want to have applied. I've just spotted, and I'm not particularly happy with the OU that this is going into. Head office users, is it really head office users, or is it just the source environment users? So I will do a change here as well. Let's go down and see whether or not my proxy addresses have corrected. Great. Yes, now both addresses have been manipulated because I added that SMTP domain. Now, one thing I've just thought about is that what happens if there's users in my target environment already? How am I going to make sure that those users are updated accordingly? So let's go and take one of these users here, any user, Lucas, for example. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create Lucas in the target. So let's take his name here and go to the target. And I'm going to choose an OU over here and just create them for the first time. Create user, Lucas. And then I'm going to take this local portion here and leave it at that. Give it a password. Cannot change password, user is disabled for good measure, and go finish. So I'm just going to copy this name, and I want to run. Now I've added in a user account, my environment has changed. The sync will only happen every 30 minutes. So I'm going to import that change that I've just done, import, start, and hopefully the moment that that will go off, detect the change. It'll be very quick. And you can see here, processed one account has updated, which will be Lucas. And I'll just run my full sync again, just to import all of those changes and rerun it. Let's just make sure that that is going to update. Fantastic. And let's look at my what if now. And let's try and find Lucas and see what's going on. So click search. Okay, there's Lucas there, but it's still saying create. But however, I've already got Lucas in my target environment. Now, why is that? So if you remember, my matching account is the user principal name. But here, the user principal names do not match. So it hasn't found this user to update them because the user principal name does not match. So just in case there are users that already exist in the target environment, I'm going to have to update my match so that it will identify Lucas. So let's go back to my sync profile. And how can I do that? Let's have a look. Go to match. I have the opportunity to put in a complex expression here. I do not have any selected yet for matching. So let's go and create one. And let's build a complex expression. So complex expressions, click create. I'm going to give it a name, match to mig target.net. Select the type. Matching, I can also use this for mapping and scoping, but I need to recreate those complex expressions. On this occasion, I'm just doing it for matching. Select my source and select my target. Now I can build an expression. I can build a set of logic to be able to really drill into and manipulate the data that we're matching for. Or in the case of mapping, I would build a complex expression to really refine the data that we're going to be building. So the first thing I had to do is if the matching source attribute value. So that's the value which we are focused on when we're dealing with this complex expression. What am I looking for? So does it end with, for example, I've got lots of options there, but for this particular one, I'm going to go end with, and I'm going to go mig source because that's what's on the object currently. Then I need to go source value, and I want to take the local part of the domain because I'm trying to match to the local part with mig target. So I'm going to go source value, and I'm going to take the first part of it. So I'm going to split it with the at, and then I'm only going to take the first part of that split. So that's really getting the local part of the UPN. Then I'm going to add onto the end mig target.net. So what I've made an error there. Let's put in inverted commas. So it's told me there, this is a good thing there. It's actually told me my formula is not going to work there. I've just recreated it. So now, before it's going to let me slave, that formula has to be correct. So if it's going to match with the mig source, I'm going to manipulate it to the mig target to match with that object. And if it doesn't find one, I'm going to leave the target value as blank. Let's click save and apply that to my sync profile. We go to the match section and then select the complex expression for the UPN. Click save. One other thing I wanted to do was change the location of the head office users. So let's select the target container, and I'm going to select the root of AD so that I'm really recreating that mapping. Okay, let's save that. Go back to my sync and look at my what if. That will then rebuild it with those changes. And let's have a look. We need to search for that person. Here they are. Fantastic. This time the action is update. So that means it's found the user object and it's going to update them. Let's have a look at that. So the screen has ever so slightly changed. This time I've got my source object. I've now got the pre-existing target object listed here, and all of the changes are in bold that we're going to perform on that target object. So you see the display name is changing. Interestingly, the OU will be kept the same as the current target object. And then we're looking down, and the mail and the proxy addresses and all of those other items are being updated as per the mappings. Let's have a look at another user, because I need to check which OU it's going into. Andre here. We have it going into the same OU structure because I changed that. Okay. Now, let's go back to the schedule. I've been doing all of this without a license for PowerSyncPro. This is an unlicensed version of PowerSyncPro. You'll notice here that the export says no license for domain. So I'm able to build all of this logic and test out PowerSyncPro without having a license. And now, if I'm happy, I can go off to our sales team and get a license. So let's go to licenses and click add. And then got one just here, which I can apply. I am now synced for my particular source. Synced, I'm now licensed for my particular source and target domains. So I can come back to the schedule. It's saying have I accepted the what if? No, I haven't. So I'm going to go to what if, click accept and export. It will now apply those settings to the target. So you can see the numbers building up there. Here, it's increasing. I do have a few warnings there. Let's just go and have a look at those. Target linked member does not exist. So we have an interesting set of circumstances here where we're creating the users for the very first time, but these users have managers. But it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario whereby we can't assign the manager unless the manager has been created already. So let's wait until all the objects have been created and the sync will need to rerun. So that sync has happened once again. If I click run now to expedite the 30-minute sync cycle, they should now all process once again, and those warnings should now disappear once it's identified that those managers do exist. So it's just running through, and there we go. Those 72 changes have now been applied in the environment for those users. Let's go to the target environment. So let's give it a little refresh. Fantastic. My MIG source limited users has appeared. Let's go and have a look at one of these. I've got my display name with the manipulated object. And my email address is also updated as well. We can go and have a look at the user principal name. That's great, as well as a proxy address. Fantastic. We've got the proxy address is manipulated there too. And that user, which I created, Lucas, is still within this directory here. However, we have now updated all of the attributes with what we were specifying in PowerSyncPro. There's the user principal name there. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this demo. It was a very quick insight into PowerSyncPro directory synchronization. Please contact our sales for more information, and I hope you enjoy these videos.